if we talk about the external influences on business activity, there are different types of external effect that's the business get affected by because they are working in a dynamic environment. Now, what are their influences? It stands with PESTLE, that is pestle, and now these pestle impacts are converted into only PEST. Now, what are these things? PEST. Now, pestle was political. P stands for political impact on the business activity, political influence. That was environmental influence. There was social influence. There was technological influence. There was legal influence. And there is economical influence. The changes in economy on the business activity, like recession and all. However, now all these influences are converted into these four influences. P stands for political and legal. E stands for environmental and economical. S stands for social, and T stands for technological. So basically, the L and the additional E is now here, the legal and economical. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So these are your external influences that the business activity faces, and we're going to discuss each and every one in detail. First, let's talk about the political and legal influences. Now, when we talk about the political and legal influences, the first things we discuss is privatization and nationalization. These are the two influences that usually nationalization are on the business activity. Privatization and nationalization. Privatization is when a public owned, or you can say public sector business. Basically, these are those businesses that are owned and controlled by the government. So when the public sector business is sold to a private sector, and nationalization is when a private sector business is sold to public. Now, these are the political changes that usually occur in the environment that the business is working in. So these influences usually have the impact on the business activity. Like if we talk about privatization is simply when you sell the public companies, or you can say the businesses which are owned and controlled by the government to the private sector. Whereas nationalization is when you sell the businesses that are owned privately to the government. Is that clear?
So there was an airline here called TAP. It used to be owned by the government, and then it was sold to the
Yeah,
private sector. So that would be
yeah,
privatization, right?
yeah. For
Okay.
example, a government airline business sold to the private airline business. So if a government business airline is sold to a private airline, this is known as privatization. And a private airline sold to a government airline, this is known as nationalization. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now let's discuss the arguments for the privatization. Like, what are the advantages of privatization? Now, firstly, the private sector businesses are profit motive. Their main aim is to make profit. So basically, they aim for efficiency. So the efficiency will increase. As you know, the privatization is when the government owned businesses is sold to a public private sector. So when the private sector will be managing the business, of course they will be having a better management, and they will be managing the business efficiently, and as a result, due to the efficiency, the cost will also reduce. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now the decision making gets faster. Now, when the business would be owned by the government, of course, the decision making would have been slower. Why? Because the government has the ministers usually are the controllers of these businesses, and the ministers, they don't have enough time to focus on each and every activity. So that is why the decisions get on delayed and delayed and delayed. So basically, decision making get delays in when it is a publicly owned or a government owned business. However, a privatized business has faster decision making. So the decision making gets faster in privatized businesses. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Then thirdly, we have that privatization makes the employees and managers responsible, and they also get motivated because they get highly paid, and also they are encouraged to take participate in the business activity and business decisions as well. So this motivates them as well. However, public all the decisions are made by the government. So in public sector, the employees are not asked for any decision, or they are not involved in the decision making process. So basically, the third advantage of a private sector business is that employees and managers are motivated. Why they are motivated? Because they are asked for making a decision in the business, and they are asked for helping, and they are also empowered by many decisions, like they are made departmental managers, and also that they can make their decisions. So empowerment and uh, involvement in business decision making allows them to motivate the workers, and the managers and employees then work really well for the business. So managers and employees are involved in decision making and are also empowered. That gives them increase motivation. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Then fourth, we have sales will, or you can say that private businesses have more access to different sources of capital. So different sources of capital. Private businesses have more access to different sources of capital because they can also issue shares to the general public. They can also take loans from the banks. So this can increase the investment as well. And also, when the project is sold, so the privatized business generates revenue for the government. How? As private businesses are sold, the government can use the proceedings to invest in any other project. Is that clear? Yeah,
So could you explain the last point one more time?
sure. Now, like for example, if a government is selling, let's suppose the government airline is being sold to the private business. Of course, the private will be paying some compensation to the government for this airline that they have bought, isn't it? So they are
Yeah.
paying some compensation for that. Like for example, if they pay $1 million, $1 billion to buy this airline, so the government can use that $1 billion to invest somewhere else
Okay.
in any other hospital or any other government project. Is that clear?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So this is how it will work. Now the disadvantages of privatization. Now let's discuss the disadvantages of this. Now, what are the disadvantages of privatization? Firstly, the state always takes decisions about the essential industries in the country. So if these decisions are made by the private companies, then everyone will not be getting the products. Only those people will be getting the products who are able to pay for it. Like for example, if the country's water supply is handed over to the private company, then the private company will be selling the products only for the profit. Like they will only sell the product to the ones who are able to pay a price for it. So water will be unavailable for those people who cannot afford the product or afford to pay for the water. So basically, not everyone will get the product. However, if it was a public limited company, then what would happen? Then everyone would have got the water supply. So the disadvantage is that the state takes decisions about essential industries, and therefore they cannot privatize these industries, as there will not be as not everyone will be able to get the product, as as not everyone will be able to get the product. Is that clear? So
Yeah.
the state should keep the holdings of the essential industry, because private companies will always work for profit and they will only supply the essential products to those who are able to pay for it. Whereas the government needs to make it available for everyone. Therefore, the disadvantage of privatization is that if essential industries are privatized, then everyone will not be able to get the product. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Then privately operated business cannot achieve coordination as they compete with each other. For example, if all the businesses are controlled by the government, such as the bus service, the electricity service, or the railway services, now if all these three businesses, the bus service, the electricity service, and the railway service, is controlled by the government, then that means the government can, make coherent policies among them. Make coherent policies means that they will make sure that all these three businesses that are owned by the government so that support each other, so that what happens, if they are supporting each other, then they will be able to provide more welfare to the society. For example, if electricity business supports the bus business and the bus business supports the railway business, so basically all these together will support the society. However, as if these businesses are privatized, then they will only be working for themselves. They will only be working for the profit that they will own, or the earn for themselves. So basically over here, the privately operated business, they cannot achieve a coherent policy. If the bus service, the railway service, or the electricity service, all these three businesses are privatized, they will be working on their own rather than working together for the welfare of the consumers. They will be only working for their own profitability. As a result, what will happen? These privately operated business will not provide a welfare to the society. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Instead, they will be competing with each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, these businesses, the privatized businesses, can also charge higher prices for their products. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So, for example, if businesses are privatized, so of course they will be charging a higher prices for the products from the customers. So, if essential products are privatized, such as water supply and electricity supply, then not everyone will be able to afford it.
So isn't the third point and the first point almost the same?
No, basically, this is they have to make everyone available for the product, and this is that they are charging a higher price to earn a profit.
Okay, okay. Yeah. All right.
And lastly, breaking up an industry into private sectors might reduce the economies of scale for the business. For example, there's an electricity business. Out of this electricity business, some of the dimensions or some of the departments are privatized. Now, when some of the departments are privatized, the business will be operating as a public sector business, as well as some of the departments will be operating as the private sector businesses. So, the problem that occurs is that the business will now have an increase in the cost, and they will not be able to achieve economies of scale because the two departments that are being privatized, they will be working on their own, and the rest of the departments that are still owned by the government, they will be working on their own. So there will be no coordination, and due to this there will also be an increase in the cost because mismanagement will also occur. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So mismanagement can also occur in the business if you privatize it. or privatize not the whole, but some parts of the business. Now let's move on to nationalization. Do we still have time?
9:10. My next class starts.
All right. You came at, I guess, 12:30.
We started
Sorry,
at around
8:30.
12. Yeah, 8, like 37, I think so.
All right. Moving on to advantages and disadvantages of nationalization. Now let's discuss the advantages of nationalization. Now, nationalization is when a privately owned business is sold to the government. So, nationalization is that the government have support. You can write the government have control of major industries. Secondly, it will have integrated policies throughout the business. Thirdly, private businesses will not be able to exploit customers by creating monopolies. Fourth, economies of scale can be achieved merging all the private business in an industry. Like nationalization is when like there are many different private businesses are operated, but the whole industry is bought by the government usually. Like for example, if there are many small clothing retailers and the government takes over them all, so it will be a one large corporation of retailing clothes that is owned by the government. Like there are many electricity providers, different electricity providers in the country. However, if government takes over the electricity industry, then all these electricity providers will now be the part of the government. Okay, and the government will be uh, operating the business as a single business. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So the government have control of major industries. So industries such as water supply, electricity supply, all these industries, the control is with the government. So everyone will be able to get the product. So that is the advantage. Secondly, there are integrated policies. As all the businesses, if they are owned by the government, so the government will create an integrated policy that helps each other within the country. So basically, for example, if you have a railway system and a bus system, and basically the transportation system in the country, they should be have integrated policy. Like there should be a bus stop at a place, and then it is easy to get a train from that specific bus stop. So basically, the bus stops and the train system should be integrated. Like if you're, for example, traveling through a metro, so if you travel through a metro, then the near that specific metro station, there should also be a bus stop, so which can take you to a nearby place. Like because metro stations are usually far from the city, and there should be a bus stop where near the metro station, so that they can take you to your office or within the city. So that the this will only be achieved if the transportation system is integrated with each other. Yeah, metro system, the metro business knows where the metros will stop, and the bus systems knows where the bus will move around. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Then private businesses will not be able to exploit customers by creating monopolies. So the private businesses will not be able to exploit the customers. Why? Because they will not be creating monopolies over here. The government will be owning everything, so government will be able to charge lower prices to the consumers. And lastly, economies of scale can be achieved. As the business merges all the business together, government usually control a single business by merging all the businesses together. So this will help them to achieve economies of scale. So as you can see, the disadvantages over here are now the advantages over here.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let's move on to the disadvantages.
So I don't think we have enough time. I only have 2 minutes to get to my next class.
Okay, no problem. All right, tell me.